Record. Is it recording? I think it
It's
is.
recording.
Okay, ladies, I am super excited about our Superpower Sunday today. We are introducing you to an amazing superstar, April Tribe Juke. And I don't know, she's quickly becoming one of my favorite people in the world because she is on a major mission. And you'll see that she signs because she has some deaf children and she is reaching the deaf community, and so many women need her message. In fact, I think the whole world needs her message. So without further ado, April, hi, thank you for being here.
Hello. And yes, this is how you say hi in sign language. That's why I'm always doing it.
Oh, perfect.
Hello.
I'm learning already. See, she's great. So April has written a wonderful book, and you can see the little thing behind her. It's called Pinpoints of Light, Escaping the Abyss of Abuse. Would you explain to us why you wrote the book and what it's about?
You bet. Thank you so much for hosting me tonight. I am just thrilled to be here. Okay. So with why I wrote the story is kind of a snapshot of what I was going through in my first marriage. So this book details out what it is like to live in abuse and to get through it and to come out on the other side. Now, that's not like the full mission of what the book is. The most important piece of the book is to know that everyone has a part to play in this, because sometimes we separate ourselves, like that happens over there, or I'm not really part of domestic violence, or we kind of separate things out. But really, if you are connected to anyone, friends, family, coworkers, even a stranger, that person you smile to maybe on the bus or at the drive-thru or whatever, they may be connected, because the numbers are staggering. It's 1 in every 4 women will be affected by some type of abuse. And the question then comes up for myself, even though I wrote the story just based on my experiences, the questions in my mind are rising, such as this, is why is the family of God being so tremendously torn apart? Because domestic violence affects the entire family. And if families are affected, then your community is affected, which ultimately leads to a society being affected, which is a country, and so on and so forth. So sometimes we kind of think maybe this is one of those platform settings where it's like, oh, so you, like for example, so you're a survivor of breast cancer. I don't know very many people, but that's kind of your niche. Oh, you are a survivor of domestic violence. I'm not sure if I really know anybody, but that's kind of your niche. Well, actually, domestic violence impacts, like I said, 1 in 4, and it actually kills more women annually than all the cancers combined.
Are you serious?
I am serious.
Girl!
So,
yeah.
And because the conversation does not come up, especially I would say in religious settings, because we want to try and keep family together, we want to try and do those things. So it feels like this conflicting matter. So really, my whole point about writing the book is to show that these things are happening to your neighbor, to your coworkers, to an aunt, to a niece, to somebody that you probably know. And with maybe 1 or 2 questions, you'll find out pretty quickly. So the mission is to obviously make people aware, give people hope, and the biggest piece is for the supporters out there. So Nicole, I would dare say you would be a supporter. I would dare say myself would be a supporter to someone else. Just because if you think of the numbers of 1 in 4, those people work, they have friends, they have family. And so that number starts to add up to almost 120 million people. And it really is impactful. And if we want to stop these types of things, we have to look at the bigger picture of possibly what's happening. And my questions start to wonder about, now I'm not saying that domestic violence can't happen to men. It happens to men, women, and children. Women are the majority of who it happens to. Children are next, and then the men just in the category of things. So that's why I'm talking about the whole family, how it's impactful. So I question, because I have 5 boys, so I'm a mother of 9, and I have 5 boys. And if those numbers are for the girls to the women, what's happening with our boys that are becoming men? What's going on? And it is a huge question. And I know sometimes a few people have kind of barely touched on it, like in a shame culture and things like that, where maybe boys that have experiences that happen to them that are hard, maybe they're not told and asked to express it.
Yeah.
And what we're finding out in the research and in everything that we're looking at is that not everyone who this is a challenging way to say it, so it's not confusing, so I'll try it. So if men are the ones causing the abuse, it's not to say that every child that grew up in an abusive home or was exposed to abuse will become an abuser. However, 97% of the people who actively abused were abused or experienced some type of abuse as a child.
Wow. Wow.
And now they're breaking that abuse down to, well, was it sexual abuse? Was it abuse in the domestic home? Was it a combination? And the numbers that are coming out are huge. So I look at this, we kind of get focused in on the victim, right? And the majority of the victim happen to be women. And it's part of the piece for sure. And we want to get people to safety for sure. And when I was first writing this, and I know for myself, when I finally got to safety, that was the piece I wanted to share. But again, if we pull back and look at this and think, what's really happening here, the focus has to be pulled back and on top of the entire family. And if kids, I remember specifically, this sounds like I'm going off topic, but I'm going to come quickly back.
You're fine.
Here, within the first few chapters, I talk a lot about my first husband and build up his story, because I felt that it would be only fair to show what he went through. And again, it doesn't equal, if you've gone through things like that, it doesn't equal that you will become an abuser. However, the likelihood of it happening, the percentages just skyrocket. And he suffered through a child molestation and sexual abuse from a neighbor, and did not say a thing. And then parked that pain right next to, in their family, they have a long line of mental illness. So we parked that pain right next to the mental illness. And I just think of it like a monster just eating and feeding on something for a decade. And then when the stress and everything became too much, it just came out raging. And it's again to show that even though we needed to escape, he needed to pay his time on justice for sure, but he still needs help.
Yeah.
So it's a big thing. So
I love that you're seeing the bigger picture, because so many times I think our whole society has a problem with this, with so many things, with like pills and eating disorders and divorce and all of that. I feel like has a heart that's not being addressed. And for me, like, that's my big mission, is to show people that self-love, like a lack of self-love, is the hugest problem we have as a society. And I think those men learn that at a young age. You know, they don't have that. And so they're taking it out on their families and their children. So you focusing not just as a victim and on the children and the mothers, but on the whole family is fantastic. How can we help you?
Okay. So how we can help and move this forward is really, it's like a threefold education piece, where we want to take the children and help them to connect socially and emotionally, so they can understand, why is it I'm feeling this way, recognize and understand it, not to stuff it away, but to work through it, to say, I'm feeling this way, I need some skills to know how to deal with this. And in families, they may not be getting those skills. So as a society, we can't just keep pushing it off to another program and another program. Yet that's also a start, because of how far down the slope we've come. We need society to also help with those programs, but we as parents and as we are building our families, we need to take it upon ourselves to do the hard work too, and be actively helping with that. Parenting is not a kickback occupation. It has to be very active. And sometimes I feel like, I call it the shame shadow or the destroyer. I feel like the distractions that he puts out there for us are it's along this very middle ground. And you address this, I think, beautifully in your book, is where we start to self-doubt as moms, and we're not this and we're not that. Then we start to spin into, I don't have enough time for me. And that can be a slippery slope, because as you need to take care of yourself, if you only then focus on yourself, and he's got you to pull you down even further. And we start to ignore the kids. We start to ignore everything that has to happen. So we have to come really with a focus of reality, of what I always call, the Sunday school answers, right? We really have to focus in on what is good, better, and best. The good things are great, but they can be so distracting. Better things help us closer, yet it's not the best thing we can do. We can still rewind, we can still repent, forgive each other, and, start again. It's okay. And I think that's a piece where, when it comes to self-worth, we have to realize that as mistakes happen, we can keep moving forward. We still have light within us. We have a light that leads us towards a bigger picture. This whole idea of my book, of the pinpoints, when we were in that depth of abuse, it was like an abyss, and we needed to have sure lights to guide us out. Well, they were the things that were the everyday stuff. It was getting up. It was staying to routines. It was, I'm a woman of faith, so it was my praying and doing some scripture time to stay connected with something that would give me some guidance. Because the shame shadow never shuts up. It's going to constantly pick. And something I want to emphasize is where, with these pinpoints of light, if you have a pinpoint, what is surrounding the pinpoint still? Absolute darkness. So it doesn't go away. The opposition is in everything. But where we choose to focus in on is where we're going to get even further. So when I decided to focus in on these pinpoints, as opposed to thinking they were just, a scatter here or there, but when I really focused on it, then I got to the next, and then I found another one, and I found another, and another, and another. And that's what led us eventually out. Now, my husband, my first husband suffered with bipolar schizophrenia. And you combine that with a house full of 5 kids, 3 that are on the autism spectrum. And for his biggest trigger was noise. Oh. And I don't know if you've been around kids that are on the spectrum. Sometimes they have a lot of shrieking and crying and screaming because they lack communication, or they themselves have, kind of been over the top. So when those would happen, it's like, for myself, I was, trying to race around to make sure everything was quiet again. Otherwise, that's when the strikes would happen. And I describe it like, there's abusers that are hunters, and there's abusers that are caged animals. So a hunter is somebody that knows their prey. They're going to groom their prey. They're going to camouflage. They're going to lie. They're going to do everything possible to get that, because that's the goal. Somebody who abuses, who is a caged animal, so to speak, they are fearful, paranoid of everything. They don't know if you're there to help or to hurt. Which one? But the end result is still abuse. And my husband, because of the mental illness, was definitely trapped in that caged animal type of thing. Any type of help, anytime I would get close to the cage, the strikes would happen. The unpredictability of verbal or emotional or spiritual abuse would happen, out of his intense fear that I was out to get him. And because that's how, with schizophrenia, you've got a lot of voices going on, and the amplification of those voices with any kind of stress is huge. And that's where we were dealing with life and death situations, because his voices had finally convinced him that we were there to torture him and eventually try to kill him. So he was going to strike first. So yeah, it gets crazy.
You have an insane history, but I think it's going to resonate with a lot of women. And there's perhaps women, since you told us the statistics are so crazy high, I'm sure there are women in this group that are suffering. I'm sorry, this is so sensitive, because oh, it just breaks my heart that they're dealing with this and that you dealt with it. But what do you want to say to them? And how can we be, you mentioned Gloria in your book, and I know you have a supporter toolkit, so I want you to cover a little bit of all of that for us.
You bet. Thank you so much for bringing that up, Nicole. So what I want to say to anyone that is in this situation or has just left, you're either right to that point or just leaving. The very first thing is make a plan. You have to make a plan. And a piece of this plan has to be a connection to certain networking. A lot of the times when we hear that, we think, oh, professionals like advocates, maybe court supporters, maybe a shelter, and all of that is true. But what I want to emphasize is that's very temporary. It will get you out of the emergency situation. And so you make a plan for that. But long term, if you haven't made other connections through what I call supporters or becoming someone's Gloria, those are those coworkers, strangers, friends, family members that keep you going so that you don't end up going back. Now, I left one time and I was out, and then I went back, and it was definitely out of weakness. It was out of another hope. There is a hook of hope that happens because when you first start dating and going out and getting married and whatever, they're not showing you that side right away. Of course they're not. And if they're hunters, they're definitely not going to until they know they've got you. And once they've got you, it's all going to come out. A caged animal reveals it in very sporadic, you don't even have a pattern with it. So you think, oh, well, maybe we're just going through another trial. Maybe it's just another trial of faith. So we're just going to, keep pushing forward. So women, I want you to know that you must make a plan. And a part of this exit plan has to be connection with networking. You cannot do this by yourself. I have to emphasize that you cannot do this by yourself. So many of you are probably in a financial abuse as well. I was the stay-at-home mom. I had a degree. I was in English. I had no certification. What am I going to do? Just all of a sudden become an editor? I needed a job in the worst way and that paid a living wage. I could have gotten something that, could have been fast food or something like that, but that was not going to be enough money for me to escape. And part of this plan started when I was in year 7 of my marriage and planning on, I need to be able to get some type of living wage. Now, I sent that out there kind of in my prayers into the universe. And when the opportunity opened up, I grabbed a hold of it for sure. I hid all the money. I opened up separate bank accounts. He knew nothing about it. And you have to make a plan that gets you out and keeps you out. Now, one thing that I was not very savvy on, and I will say this because if you haven't been around a community or a culture that has been in a lot of abuse, which I didn't know any aunts or uncles or friends or neighbors who was in abuse. I felt like I was the only one. So I was so full of shame. I did not dare reach out because it would have been something like another, what I felt would be another scourge put upon me somehow, right? And that's just my own way of viewpoint. So I needed something in some way to be able to make this absolute plan. I figured that professionals like shelters and things like that would be able to help me out. And so when we made our run, that's what I would do. I found out very quickly, because I was financially employed as a teacher, I made too much money to go to the shelter. So I was not permitted to go to the shelter. So I ended up going to hotels for a few nights until that money ran out. And then by the mercy of another supporter that I found through work, I got to stay in her basement for a while we were still trying to figure out apartments. And make your plan as best as you can. Now, the execution of your plan, be very flexible in the execution because you don't know how that's going to happen. But if you know steps, if you have things set up, it is so much better. So that is the very first thing I would say is you must have a plan and do not continue to isolate. Reach out where you can as safely as you can. I know a lot of hunters, so to speak, that's the whole point is of isolation, of you just being out there by yourself.
Yeah.
Because who are you going to reach and who are you going to grab onto? There was a time that we lived in a valley where it was 10 miles to the nearest gas station or grocery store or neighbor.
Mm.
What are we going to do on the night we're going to leave? Start running, kids, because I'm not sure how much gas we have in the van. Be stranded out there? Yeah. So it takes time. It takes time. And shed your tears and allow yourself the grieving process that happens, because it hits and it will happen. For many of us, it's not a switch that's just like, I'm out of there, I left. You will have nights where you will reminisce. And I'm with Facebook groups all the time where people will post and say, I've been out for 3 weeks. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm so lonely. I'm thinking about going back.
Oh.
Because they have such low self-worth, such low light, that they figure abuse just to be with someone is better than being alone. So women, you have value, you have worth, you have light. I can't emphasize it enough. Strangers will see it. One of them in my book, her name is Gloria. I love her name. She truly was a glorious person to me, and she could see the value in us. And through her help in this networking, that she just kind of popped up at the right time, at the right moment, answered to prayers, led us on to another huge piece of safety, which literally saved us, because he came looking for us. After we'd been away for a few days, they don't let go. The most dangerous time for any victim to leave is when they actually leave, because it enrages the abuser to a point of insanity where 90% of the homicides that happen in domestic violence are after you have left.
Wow.
After you have left, because they are so bent on getting you back, and if they can't, then no one can.
Wow.
So 90% of the homicides that happen following is when you leave. Now,
So do you think that's why a lot of the women stay too, is because they're afraid?
Yeah. They have been threatened with their life. They have sometimes the physical abuse and evidence on them. Sometimes it's the emotional and spiritual abuse, the financial abuse. They have all those pieces to it, and they know that that person's going to deliver forward. So that's what I'm talking about. Planning is not, it's not a fast and an easy thing, but it has to happen in order for you to make this break. I knew for us that once we left, instead of being the caged animal, we were going to become the prey, and he was going to become the hunter, because of how intense his voices were. And it was absolutely true. He searched and searched for us. And then I was able to get a protective order through the court, and that was through professional advocacies. They helped me get that protective order, and we put down everything. The grocery stores I shopped at, my child's daycare, the workplace, my kid's school, everything I could think of, we put it all down there. So that if he shows up, I have the documentation, 911 can be called. I mean, I don't have to show anyone the document, then call 911. I call 911, and when they come, they're like, yeah, you know, it's an immediate arrest because he broke the protective order. So,
and how long did it take you to get that for the women that are scared to leave?
Okay, that's a great question. So I share this story in the book where on the day I decided to leave, there was a police officer. I won't share all those pieces, but basically I met up with a police officer, we'll say that. And he gave me a look, and he asked me, "Are you running?" And I choked out a yes, a little squeak of a yes, and he handed me a card. And he said, "You have to call the number on this card." And it was for a shelter and a women's support group called Safe Harbor. And he said, "I need you to leave a message." By the time all of everything else had happened, he said, "I need you to leave a message on their answering service, because they're not there anymore, that says that you are in trouble, you fear for your life, you want a protective order, and that you've left. If you don't leave that message, your abuser can call me and say, someone's kidnapped my kids, I think it's my wife." And then he has to come and search for me. Now the police are after me because I took the kids, I kidnapped the kids. So there's all this twisting that happens. But because I made the phone call, I left the message, there is evidence there. It has a timestamp on it. So he posted bail about 2 hours after that. So if he was to do anything or make a phone call like that, it has evidence there that prior to anything happening, it showed we were running for our lives, we escaped, and so on and so forth. So he gave me that big piece. I had no idea was supposed to be part of the plan. I mean, in my life, I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't even know what a CSI episode looks like, right? All these types of things, clueless. And it's not like you have those types of classes in high school. Like, hey, this is how you escape from domestic violence. You don't know things. And so a lot of that innocence, I didn't know, but he did because he knew the law and he has experienced that police officer. So he gave me another pinpoint that helped us to ensure for our safety. So I can tell you, victims, financially get a plan, stay networked and connected, contact your local shelters before anything, find out what your professional advocates can do for you as far as courts, for restraining orders, protective orders. Find out as much as possible before you make the leave. I knew nothing. I learned a lot.
And now you're sharing that with everyone. And what, I know you have a moonshot, like you have amazing dreams. Tell us about those, because I know that you can make a massive impact in this world because of your story and because of your mission. So tell us about it.
Okay, so my mission is for everyone to become a beacon of light for the entire family. Again, it goes back to that family. We want to make sure that the families are strengthened, that we have programs in place to help with communities, to help our boys to become men, that they know that they are protectors and nurturers of the family. They are not hunters of the family. For women to know their worth, their self-worth, their value, that they are of deity. And from that, and because of that, they don't have to accept the trash and the garbage. And to stop listening to the shaming that pulls down their self-worth so much that I guess that's all I'm good for. Stop. We have to then enrich and bless the children to know who they are, why they're here, and where they're going. That if they know their value and their worth, they become the mothers and the nurturers and the fathers and the protectors, and they create family stability, which changes society. My second moonshot is that this will become a movie, and not just any movie. It will be directed by Ron Howard, because he directed and produced a movie called A Beautiful Mind. And I don't know if anyone of you has seen that, but that was a life-changing experience, which I share in the book, for me because of the schizophrenia. And I am putting together these letters and these contacts to send to him to say, I know you created this movie, it happened in 2001, it was such a long time ago, but did you know that your movie saved a family? And I don't think he's ever going to connect domestic violence with his movie of something that is completely different in it. And the story doesn't have anything to do with that piece. But I want him to know that. And I feel that it would be an honor for him to then share how this story can go out and to help so many more that are in not only these domestic violence situations, but to understand more of mental health, to understand that what happens to us in the past needs to be worked through to understand how we can still have that brighter future. Not to ignore it, not to stuff it down, but to work through it. It's painful, it's hard, but you are worth it. All of God's children are worth it. Those are some of my moonshots.
Amen. I am so proud of you and so grateful to have people like you that take tragedy and turn it into triumph, that just reach out to other people, because I know that it's scary for you. It's scary to put that message out there. He's still alive. He's still out there, still doing bad things.
Yep.
But girl, we want to support you. I know I want to put a little plug in for your supporter toolkit. You'll have to tell me the link so we can put it in there.
Great.
To make sure that people like me, who I really don't know anybody, but if I did come in contact with somebody, I want to know what to do and how to help them. And people that are suffering, there's just so many things. And I also wanted to mention that I feel like part of the thing with the raising of the children is to focus on our boys and making sure that it's okay for them to express themselves, right? Because we don't, we as a society have this thing of them closing in, walling it off, not feeling comfortable, right? So how can we raise our boys to be like that?
Yeah, okay. This is a big societal fight, because if you looked over the education process over the past almost 50 to 60 years, boys are trying to be, this is really hard to say, but I'm just going to say it out there. Okay, so I'm a teacher, and I see this all the time, right? Boys, they need to sit down, be quiet, sit down, be quiet. They're too rambunctious. They're this, that, and the other. We're trying to make them become like little girls in the classroom. They don't even know who they are. Some of the most lost people in this world are our boys. Well, am I supposed to act this way? I get in trouble. If I'm supposed to be myself, then I get in trouble because I'm loud, because I'm excited, because I have some energy. Everything labeled. That must be HDD. This must be this. This must be that. Maybe they're just boys. Maybe we could have them play some more. Maybe if they do some of the rough and tumble together, that is part of how they know ranking, placement, understanding of their borders and their lines. They're completely different than girls. Completely. So we need to raise our boys to become the men by allowing them to be boys so that they can become men. It's laced with so much political craziness, but really, think about it. If you think about healthier generations ago, what were the boys doing? And what is permitted and not permitted anymore? Why? Why is that? So if you can, at any point, encourage it and to allow our boys to become who they need to be, and this understanding of working through it, yeah, of course we want them to share and whatever, but they're going to do it in a little bit different ways. It's not going to look like how the girls share it, and that's fine. But if they know that someone has their back, and if they know that they can do this stuff, it's amazing. Again, I'll say in education, when we have male teachers out there, they just have this thing that no matter how many conferences I go to, no matter how much training I ever get, it's a guy. And when the boys and the guys get together, they get it. It's just like this magic. It's male magic. I don't know what it is. It allows them to be what it is. And they know they can rough and tumble. They can do a little hit once in a while. They shake, make up, and they go on because they know where the boundary is. For boys, it's very clear. So, and some of those things doesn't turn them to become these abusers, which is what the fallacy is. Like, oh, if they hit and they whatever, oh, they're going to become this. No, they need to know, whoa, that crossed the line. And so if you've got all this energy and stuff, let's put you in things that allow for healthy ways for the energy to come out. Sports, that and the other are fine if in the sports they aren't dumbed down for maybe their lack of skill in something. And that, those are hard things to go through. But if we allow them to become, then they're going to be so much better off.
Oh my goodness. So many good gold nuggets you're giving us, April. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Okay, one last question. Tell us, because it is Superpower Sunday, what is your superpower? You've already
I would think that my superpower is loving my family. Superpower is allowing the 9 kids to be who they are as best as I can. And when we see people maybe going off the path, so to speak, giving guidance to know, hey, those are choices that you're making. I can show you the direction that might lead to. I'm going to show you the direction that these choices will make too. And I talk about it a lot when I teach with special education teachers, is that as parents, we are those guide. We build scaffolding around our kiddos so they know and understand what's right, what's wrong, what can hurt, those things, right? And sometimes we term it as safety. But the problem comes in is when we're trying to make everything so safe, they never learn how to fall. They never learn how to get up and pick themselves up. So the parameters or that scaffolding, we have to be able and be willing to, as parents, to take it down watch them stumble and fall and everything in a little bit that is acceptable. Like, I'm not going to not tell them about drugs and alcohol or sex and just say, yeah, why don't you go figure it out? No, I'm going to show them parameters. I'm going to show them these things, and I'm going to teach them in their ways. And then I'm going to show, hey, let's build some trust with you. Here's some things, see how they do with it. If they don't do so well with it, let's try it, in some other places that are relatively, choices that aren't going to cause major problems, and allow them to learn by those boundaries, trip and go. That is such a huge amount of freedom, and it also builds their self-worth, because they're like, my actions created this, good or ill, whatever, my actions did this, so I'm responsible for what's happening here. Oh, okay, I get it. And if we're worried as moms is the perfect house, and so we're always constantly cleaning up, they don't ever learn the responsibility of, like, whoa, you mean this is what's happening? We went without a dishwasher for 4 weeks with a family of 11. Let me tell you really quickly, my little ones know how to wash their dish now, because they're like, there's nothing in the cupboard. I'm like, yeah, that's all right there in the sink. And they're like, well, what are you going to do about it? I'm like, what are you going to do about it? So when they got hungry enough and they were tired, like, one kid was ready to pull out the dog bowl to put his cereal in before he would wash a dish. I'm like, all right.
Wow.
Let's just say he didn't feel very good for a few days after that. That's the decision he made, and he washes his dish now. I'm just saying, there's the thing about who we dressing it up for this imaginary person that's going to be coming over that never comes over. Like, it's so lame. Give yourself a break, people. I'm just saying. Anyway.
Amen. I love that. Give yourself a break. Give yourself a happy dance and celebrate the little wins, and let the kids fail forward.
Forward, right. Exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell us how to keep in contact with you, or where they can find. I know Amazon, you're pushing Amazon. We want to get it to #1, ladies.
Yes, we want to get there. Yeah.
If you read it, because I read it in like 2 days. I laughed, I cried, happy tears and sad tears. So emotional, just amazing book. Highly recommend it.
Thank you. Yes. So yes, it's on Amazon, the Kindle version and the paperback version. We are so close to getting our bestseller tags on those two. So any of those would be great. My supporters toolkit you can find at www.supporterstoolkit.com, and that is the kit where we help specifically. It's not for victims; it's for the friends, family, coworkers, strangers. So Nicole, right now you don't know of anybody who's in abuse, but if you were to get the kit, you would know right away 2 top skills of what to do if you know of anyone that's in abuse, and you'll have a lot of opportunities to practice, so that when somebody that you know, or maybe you'll have like a calling at church that you'll run into somebody that is in one of these situations, and you're like, I know what to do now. And so it is a very preventative type of thing, and it helps those victims to network with you, because you'll know what it is to do. There's 2 top skills.
We almost made it through.
Baby! Hi, baby! Your shirt says hi. I'm saying hi.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. You're a mom. I'm a mom. I get it. Yeah, we're all good. It's the point of the supporters toolkit is to help anyone who may know of someone, and even if you don't, you can learn these skills. It's at a price point that has a low entry to get in, to get the information. And one of the purchasers wrote a testimonial that was almost 4 pages long. And
wow.
And I was like, can I take this clip? She's like, use them all. I'm like, wow.
That's awesome.
She's been a supporter, but didn't know exactly what her role was and how to do it. And 2 things clarified quickly for her. She put them into place, and she was like, this is amazing. I know exactly how to support this person now. And I don't worry. I don't have the fear. I don't have this burden on my shoulders anymore. I know exactly what to do. I feel like a first responder now. Aww. And I don't have to worry so much. And when I see it, I'm right there because I have the skills. So that's what this
That's awesome. What a testimony. April, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story, sharing your message, and for your mission. We are so proud of you, and we're behind you all the way. We want you to succeed, and we want the whole world to succeed. And I love that we're going to focus on the bigger picture, the heart of the matter, not just the symptoms or the victim.
Yeah, got to figure out on that whole thing. Yeah, I know when I go around and I speak on a national stage, when we talk about addressing it for the family, it is like a relief in the room. They're like, okay, yes, something I can really hold on to, something I can actually change. I can go home with one of those skills today and change something. And that's the empowerment process. I guess that's another third mission on this, is getting out there and just sharing, speaking the story. Because when I speak, I just,
absolutely, you become passionate and happy, and I love it. So thank you so much for sharing your story. I'm going to end the recording now, and then maybe we can chat for just a second.
You bet.
Okay.